Hey guys, John here. So today's video is about wavetables, making wavetables inside Avenger and bringing them back in and making some cool stuff with them. Now, I found this technique originally on the official Vengeance YouTube channel, and I wanted to talk about that process and kind of expand on it a little bit and make some cool stuff with that process. So with that being said, let's go to menu, initialize, and let's start off from a blank slate. Now, this video is going to be a little bit longer than the other one, so stick with me. I promise you, you're going to think this is really cool, and you're going to start making some cool stuff with it. So first thing that we want to do is make some type of interesting harmonically structured sound. So what's cool for that in the video is doing some stuff with the sync. Right, that's just a cool sound in general. So what we can do is bring this all the way to the top like that and use a mod envelope, drag and drop this guy here and bring this all the way to the left. So we kind of have that automated or modulated. Now it's a little bit fast for my taste. So instead of having this on the default 2, let's extend this to 4. So it kind of goes on for a little bit longer, and I'm in BPM 120 in case you care. Okay, that's pretty cool, but wait, there's more. We can do a little FM here to make it just a little bit more interesting. So maybe we can do something like this. Maybe that can be like the main maximum value for FM, and do the same thing with a mod envelope, drag and drop this here and bring this to the left. So this same mod envelope is moving both the FM and the sync together, making this sound. Maybe that might be kind of cool here. Okay, now instead of harmonic, what I like doing as well, because I've made quite a few of these ones, I found octave was pretty cool in bringing this up by 1 notch here. And then we can drop this down by an octave for a transpose. So it's a very interesting, harmonic, crazy sound here. Okay, so now we can do other things if we want to. That's totally up to you. Maybe you can modulate these other knobs with a different LFO or a different mod envelope. It's up to you how you want to do it, but I think for now, for this example, FM and sync is probably enough here. So if we close out Avenger, what I basically have here is one bar. If we open this guy up here, is going to be this C2. And that goes on for obviously 1 bar, so it matches what we're doing here. So we have that looped, and then we can just export this as a wave, make sure to loop that region just in case, go to OK. And like I said, I've done this quite a few times. So V4, let's go for this example, V5, hit OK, and it's going to export that audio, and we bring it up here to this folder. So now what we can do is go back to Avenger, and we're going to start processing this sample that we just made with Avenger. Now you can do the sound in whatever synth that you want, but this is just the whole process of doing this with Avenger. So we have a fresh slate here, and now we can click on saw, go to resample, and then let's bring this one right in here, something like that. So we have this. Now there's a couple things we want to do to edit this because we're going to make this into our own customized wavetable. Now this is the sample that we're basically getting that information from. So the first thing, we probably want to normalize this. I like changing this guy to 2048. It's a little bit fast because there's a lot of extra dead space that we don't really need. So we can bring down a number of waves here, and then we can go probably to here is going to be the end, and we can always zoom in and move the scroll, kind of really hone in on exactly where we want this to end, as well as the beginning, because you can also move this guy here in case you want a very specific part of this sample as your wavetable, which is really interesting because you can have a pretty interesting sample, and maybe there's like a little bit, maybe in the middle, the end, that you really want that to only be the wavetable. This is going to be kind of the spot where you really want to dial that in there. So we have this guy. We can add maybe a little bit of a depth if we want to take it off tempo sync and really slow it down so we can hear what's going on here. So we basically have this here. Now, if we're happy with this and we like this, then we can go down here and click export. And again, I've done this a lot. So let's go FM table 5. So where's our 4? Let's go 5. And then what's important too is wherever you save this .table file, because right now I'm doing it in my own expansion under the wavetables folder so we can find it easier in the browser. So something to think about. So let's save that there. And again, let's go back to a new preset. And now we can go to saw, and then we go to our wavetables, and then we scroll down to whatever expansion that we use. So here's mine, and then FM5. FM5. Now we have this in here as its own wavetable, which is really interesting. So if we took this again off the speed and really slowed this down, we have this in here, and we can always adjust this here, the adapt with different versions here if we'd like to. Okay, so now we've brought in this wavetable. So what can we do with this to make this really creepy? And a certain thing I like doing with these types of sounds. So first thing, I want to take the trigger not on voice, but on the first. As I hit notes, it still keeps going, ascending on this envelope here, and also changing the mode, or the mode to ping pong instead of just looping it. Because once we get back up here, we kind of want it to go back down, so it doesn't really snap the beginning anymore. So here we can add some release. Something kind of interesting, and then maybe a little bit of attack with those nice little curve like that with your right click. Okay, now that's pretty cool. Now let's add some unison here. Drop down our filter. Little resonance. And then we can also use this wavetable as a modulation source on our cutoff knob and give this a little bit of depth like that. Okay, now we're getting somewhere here. And another thing we can do is add some more of these voices here. Let's go to 7. Maybe detune them a bit. And then let's go to our voicing and add another voice here, an octave up here, and maybe dial in the volume how we want it. And that's probably moving a little bit too fast. Let's go down here to our speed and maybe bring this down a little bit. Okay, so we have the modulation on the cutoff on the from the wavetable, but what we can also do is modulate this again with an LFO and right-click here and go to the random smooth and then take it off sync and just kind of make it slow as well. Now this one is going to go on the cutoff. Now for this guy, I don't really want to. Here's the thing. We can make this bipolar as it is right now, or we can make a unipolar by turning the offset, but I think I want to reuse this LFO as a bipolar one. So for this guy, if we're looking at this LFO on the filter cutoff, let's give it a little bit of depth. And it's probably a little bit too fast. Because it's that change over time that makes things really, really interesting. So here we're just kind of moving the cutoff back and forth as well as this wavetable modulation source. Now with this same LFO, what's nice to do is drag and drop this onto the pan and give it a healthy amount. And what we're going to do as well is for this filter here, we're going to maybe bring it kind of low like this. So it's all ominous, and then grab our macro, drag and drop this guy here, and then go to our mod matrix. So we have the first macro, and maybe let's turn this all the way to the top and see where we want it at the most. Probably all the way at the top. So let's go percentage and then bring us to 100. So now this macro knob, this hole from 0 all the way to 100 is going to start from this point here all the way to the end evenly. Okay, so that's pretty cool now, and we haven't even touched effects or EQ or compression or any of that stuff yet. So we have that. Now, we can also do a little bit of the spread randomness here. I kind of like doing that because the change over time shouldn't only be harmonically. It should also be maybe some volume. Maybe it should also be some panning, kind of moving around the stereo field and some depth and kind of things like that. So on our first effect stack, let's hit this with an EQ because there's a lot of content going on here. We kind of want to accentuate some of the lows, take some mud out, maybe some highs. We'll see what happens. So let's open up our filter a little bit and actually rename this as filter. Naming is good. Okay, so there's a little EQ, and then hit it with a compressor, maybe go a little bit higher, maybe 7 or 8 to 1, something like that. Okay, so this is cool. Let's go also to our dimension expander and bring this up a little bit here. And we could slow the wavetable down just a little bit more. So I'm gonna hold down shift and kind of just make it a little bit slower. And with these types of sounds, it's really only one note that we really have to focus on, and letting the synth and the modulation kind of do the rest for us. That's kind of the concept with this type of patch here. So we have EQ, compression, the dimension expander, and what we can do as well is delays are going to be super helpful. So we'll add a first delay here, 1/8, take out some of the low end, and also modulate this 100% because it kind of gives it adds more to this vibe here, and maybe bring up the mix too. Maybe a little bit more feedback. And then after this, we're going to hit this with a reverb. Now, I do like the root-averb. That's kind of nice. You can also go to the AA. They're both pretty good. But what's nice about the root-averb is we can change this from stage to abyss. And then we're going to use some shimmer, but we're going to make it a little disgusting. So -1 semitones, which always gives the creepy vibe, and add some shimmer feedback. So already pretty crazy with that there. So now after this reverb, let's add another delay because we also want to have this delay or these delays get affected after this root-averb, which is an interesting thing as well. And for this, we can either go 1/16. That might be kind of interesting as well. And again, let's modulate this 100%, bring up some of the mix and then the feedback. And the more effects and the more tails you add, it's going to obviously contribute to a higher CPU usage, but it sounds amazing. Okay, so this is pretty much a real creepy sound, and this is only really one oscillator. Now, to kind of accentuate this as well with these types of pads, I do like putting this type of sound in some type of environment, or also something that kind of goes with the theme of this. So what we can do is let's add another oscillator, let's add another effect stack, and probably another filter, maybe another amp. We'll see how that goes. So let's route this to FX2, the filter to number 2. And again, we'll see how the this amp works for this oscillator. But for this guy, if we solo this, we're using this amp, which again, now that I think about it, let's add a second amp just in case, so you can kind of see what I'm going for here. So we basically have a default saw wave because everything else is muted because this is solo. Now for this, let's bring down our gain. I don't really care for the saw wave at the moment, but I want to use some noise. And if you guys didn't know, in the newer versions of Avenger, there's not just this noise here. We have a lot of stuff under the organic stuff. So an interesting one is Noise City. So we have some kind of similar sound, and let's also give it some release for this, and maybe some attack. So we have that. Now we can tune this down like an octave-ish or so. So we have those kind of like low-pitched voices and almost some jingling stuff at the top. And that might actually sound interesting. And then we can right-click for the filter here. Which in itself, it's kind of creepy. So if we unsolo this here, and maybe actually, you know what? Let's put some effects on this guy. Let's maybe put some delay and also an EQ. This probably shouldn't have too much low end because we probably don't need it. We can always add a sub or something like that later. We can change the color here, but this is just kind of a, I guess, a safety net for us, so to speak. Maybe some of that resonance there. Yeah, that stuff. Let's bring that down a little bit. Okay, so we have that, and then we can also add another root reverb and also put this in Abyss, and then shimmer the tuning is going to be -1, and then bring us some of that feedback. So we have something like that to work with, and let's unsolo this and see what we have here. So as you can see there in the background, especially as this filter goes a little bit darker, as we start cutting the highs from the first oscillator, this wavetable one that we made, the second oscillator, this noise, the city sound, kind of starts becoming a little bit more present, and we can't really tell what's going on. It's tuned down. We can maybe make it out like footsteps or something. We might hear some type of voice in the background. And that's part of the stuff that makes it interesting. Now, the question that you can also do as well, so we have this first filter on this macro, which is controlling this first oscillator one. Now, the second one is setting to filter 2, which we don't have any modulation on this. Now, you could put this on a macro on the second one and have two controls for the first oscillator with the first filter and the second oscillator for the second filter. You can do it that way, or you can just send all of them to the master filter and control them with one. It's really up to you how you want to do it. I think it's kind of cool once we bring this first oscillator down, so it's just ominous, and then we really start to notice this second sound source here. Right, if we muted this, we just had that low end. But if we unmuted this, it almost gives us a space to the sound. And at the very end, if we would like to, we can EQ and do a little bit of small compression to kind of glue all this stuff together. So yeah, let's do that a little bit. Now, last thing, I mean, maybe hopefully your mind's starting to turn, we can do this and do that, and that's the whole point of this whole thing. But one thing that you could do as well, so these types of extra sounds like this noise on oscillator 2, this guy, so that can be cool, but it can also be distracting. It might be too loud. It might be too quiet. So you can either put this level on a macro and control it that way, or you can do it as a toggle button. It really depends on how you want to do that. So if we're on the mixer, this first one, let's call this like Wavetable WT, and the second one, let's go noise, something like that. So we can see this down here. Now we can use this macro button if we'd like to. So we can drag and drop on this guy. And we can keep this off for now, but then once we turn this noise on, so let's go to noise, and then let's double click like 50, for example. So once we turn this on, then we start playing something, and our fader jumps to 0. Or we can turn it off. That could be cool, but keep in mind that's going to be a set value, just basically obviously an on-off. So you could also put it on a macro and control this fader as well with one of your macros. It really depends on how you want to set it up, but that's just kind of something to think about. So this video went on quite long, so hopefully you learned something. Give it a try. Try to make some of these patches, make some crazy wavetables, bring them back in and do some wild stuff with it. So yeah, thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll see you in the next one.